Hi, I am Aliza Tanveer from Skill Curve. In this video, you will learn how to launch a Redshift data warehouse using CloudFormation. CloudFormation is needed for launching a data warehouse because with the AWS console, everybody can be able to create new clusters or make changes to the previous one. In order to avoid this, CloudFormation is used. And to launch Redshift data warehouse using CloudFormation, we will first install the AWS CLI, then we will set the default region, then we will configure the AWS CLI credentials, then we are going to configure the user permissions to enable interaction, and then finally we will create a stack using the CloudFormation using AWS CLI. So for the first step, which is to install the AWS CLI, open Google and type in AWS CLI install. Then open the first link which says docs.aws.amazon.com getting started install. And once you land on the page, scroll down a little bit and you will see AWS CLI install and update instructions. Select your operating system. I am going to go with the Windows. You can select the operating system with which you are working. Then you have the option to install or update the AWS CLI. Here you have an MSI installer link which you can click to download the AWS CLI installer, or alternatively you can run this command on your command prompt to execute it using the CLI. I am going to go with the MSI installer one, and once the MSI installer is downloaded, click on it and run through the installation wizard and follow the steps to install the AWS CLI. Once the installation is complete, then you have to ensure whether the AWS CLI has been successfully installed or not. For that, you have to open your command prompt, and inside the command prompt, you have to type the command AWS version. And if your AWS is successfully installed, it is going to give you the version. Otherwise, it will give you an error showing that command is unidentified. Okay, so if you get the version, this means that we have successfully installed the AWS CLI. Now, since we are using the AWS from our local system and not from the AWS console, then we have to make certain configuration changes in order to enable the interaction between the AWS CLI and the AWS console. So the first configuration that we want to do is to configure the region in which AWS console is present, and for that you have to write this command aws config set default dot region, and here you have to define your region in which your AWS console is present. This is the region where my console is present, so I have added this. Then press enter and your default region for the AWS console is set. The next step is to configure the AWS credentials, and for that it is necessary that you have a user. To ensure that you have a user, go to your AWS console, search for IAM, and once you are on the IAM management console, click on users, and once you are on the users, here is the user that I am working on. You also have the user for which you have provided the IAM rights, and once you click on the user, you will have different access rights, different keys, and different security passwords for it. Let's go back to our CLI. Okay, now we have to configure the credentials for the AWS console, and for that we have to write the command aws configure, and once you type the command it will ask you to enter certain values. The first value that it requires you to enter is the AWS access key ID. This is the access key ID that you have generated for your IAM user. So I am going to paste here the AWS secret key, and once you enter the AWS access key, it asks you to enter AWS secret access key. This is also the key that is auto generated by the AWS. So I am going to paste it as well, and then you have to provide your region name. My region name is AP South 1. So I am going to provide the region name. You will provide the region where your AWS console is present. And then you have to provide the default output format. I am going to go with the JSON. Press enter, and if no error is displayed, this means that your system has been configured. Now the next step is to configure the user permissions, and for that go to your AWS console, and here you have to go towards the role again, then move towards your users, click on the user for which you want to handle the permissions, and then here in the permission policies I have already defined the permissions, but if you do not have any permission for your user, you can simply click add permissions, and then from the add permission option you have to select the inline option. And once you are on the page, you can either select visual editor. I am going to go with the JSON, and inside the JSON you have to provide the following key value pairs. So what here I am going to do is I am actually defining it the permissions which shows the allow permissions and the actions which it is allowed to perform, including the CloudFormation create stack, CloudFormation describe stack, and CloudFormation delete stack. This means that this particular user will be able to perform the stack creation, stack describing, and stack deletion, and I am providing all the resources to this particular user to perform those actions defined in the above part. And once you are done with it, you simply have to click review policy in case you already have the policy, otherwise you will have to add the policy. Okay, so once you are done with it, you will have the policy for the user. Now the next part is to actually create a stack using the CloudFormation, but for that we need two files, which is create cluster.json file and a parameter file which are stored in the params.json file. So let's have a look at these two files to see what is written in it and how it is will be used for by the CloudFormation. So the first file we are going to see is the create cluster. Here inside this file we have certain data. This is the data which is used by the AWS to create the cluster. It has the database name that will be created. Then we have the cluster type, where we are defining that the type of the cluster is going to be string. The default value is going to be a single node, but the allowed values will be single node and multiple node as well. Then we have the number of nodes, where its type is number and the default value is 1. Similarly, we have the node type, in which we will select the dc2.large and the allowed values are multiple values. Then we have the master username and master password, and then for the inbound traffic you will see that the default value is all IP addresses, but for production purposes you will definitely provide the IP address for which you want to allow the cluster to be accessed. Then we have the port number and the default value is 5439 for the JDBC. Then we have different values, different conditions for the clusters and so on. Another thing to note is the resources. Here inside the resources you will see that we will have a Redshift cluster which depends upon the attached gateway. It have the properties of cluster and number of nodes are defined, and then it has multiple values which will be defined to create the cluster once we run the stack using the CloudFormation. Now let's move towards the other file, which is params.json. This file contains different parameters in the form of key value pairs. So the first parameter key is the database name, which have a value of first redshift. Okay, then we have a parameter key for the cluster type and its value is a single node. This means that the cluster created will be having a single node. Then we have the node type, which has a value of dc2.large. Then master username is admin, the master user password is the password value, and the inbound traffic is all IP addresses. So that is all about params.json. Let's go back to our command prompt, and now we are going to run the command to actually create the stack. And to do so, we will first navigate to the directory where these two files are present. In my system, these are present in the F directory, so I am going to navigate to there. Then this is the command that we are going to use. So the command is AWS CloudFormation create stack, and we are defining the stack name as first redshift. Then we have used the template body flag, which is stored in the file createcluster.json, and the parameters are stored in the file params.json. Now after executing this command, If there is no error, then a stack ID will be returned, which ensures that the command has been successfully executed and the stack has been created. Now let's move towards the next step, which is to describe the stack that we just created. And in order to describe the stack, we can write this particular query. The query is AWS CloudFormation describe stack, and the stack name is first redshift. Upon executing the query, it is going to display us the data which is present inside the stack that we just created, having the stack id, stack name, different parameter values that we define in the params.json file, and the create cluster.json file respectively. You can also verify the creation of this stack from the AWS console as well. So in order to verify it, go to your AWS console, and here you have to select the CloudFormation. You can either search it or click it from here, and once you are on the CloudFormation page, you have to click stacks and you will see the stack named first redshift which is created. Click on it and go to the events, and you will see different events that we described in the create cluster.json file being created with the stack. And another thing to note is that along with the stack, a cluster named first redshift cluster will also be created. To verify it, go to AWS Redshift, and once you are on the page, you will see a cluster named first redshift cluster 1 being created. So once your cluster is created, this is all that we are going to do. If you are working with the free tier, don't forget to clear out the resources, and in order to clear out the stack, go to your CLI and run the command AWS CloudFormation delete stack and provide the stack name to delete the stack that we just created. And once you execute the query, your stack will be deleted. And you can also verify it from your AWS console. Go to your console, and in the CloudFormation, you will see that the stack that we just created has been deleted after executing the delete stack command. And along with deleting the stack, the delete stack command will also delete the cluster that was created using the CloudFormation when we created the stack. And this is all about launching a Redshift data warehouse using CloudFormation. That is all for this video. Thank you.